So now let's go ahead and turn the conversation to some of those amazing faculty and staff who are doing research and work on the front lines of COVID-19. So first up, I'd like to introduce Nathan Ames, who happens to be a two-time graduate of our welding engineering department, so he's a fellow alum. And he's currently the executive director for the Center for Design and Manufacturing Excellence. So Nate, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your work in manufacturing and personal protective equipment.
Okay, thank you everyone for zooming in to hear a little bit about what we've been doing to try to fight the coronavirus. I gotta tell you, it's quite an honor to be able to stand here and tell the story. Thanks, Dave, for the invite. In the beginning of the coronavirus, when it first hit the U.S., our center, we knew we wanted to be part of the solution. We didn't exactly know what to do, so we just started raising our hand. We proactively ran towards the problem and contacted everybody we knew across campus and offered our assistance. Being that we're the College of Engineering's Design and Manufacturing Center, we kept our message very, very simple and crisp. We told everybody that would listen, if you can articulate what you need, we'll find a way to put a solution into production for you. Nasal pharyngeal swabs were one of the first battles that we took on. OSU's Infectious Disease Institute, the Institute of Materials Research, and my team at CDME, we identified the shortage of NP swabs very early in the pandemic, possibly before many of the clinicians even identified it. We quickly joined a team of researchers from across the country that included Harvard, University of South Florida, Northwell Health, US Army, and several others, where we were able to help develop a 3D printable NP swab design. We took that swab, brought it to two Ohio-based manufacturers for the university to procure swabs from. We optimized a sterilization process for these swabs and rolled out an incoming validation test program to qualify them for field deployment as they rolled into the university. To date, several 100,000 of these, we're actually approaching 500,000 now, of these 3D printed swabs have been delivered to OSU, and we're currently deploying them to various test stations across the state of Ohio. We just entered the last phase of this program. We're now working to optimize the design for the future should anything happen again, and roll out an injection molding program so that we could rapidly go back and forth between fighting the immediate fight and supporting long-term supply chain. This work was funded by a mix of funds from my center, the CDME, the College of Engineering, Office of Research, Institute of Materials Research, and the state of Ohio. Now, the next program we got involved in, we called isolation boxes. Our anesthesiologist from Wexner Medical Center, they reached out to us shortly after the cases started to roll in. Because they were so short on PPE, they noticed, or they identified a need to physically isolate themselves from the coughing and spittle of the patients. This became especially prevalent when the patient was being intubated or when intubation was being removed. Luckily, we have Dr. David Ekman, who's also active in the College of Engineering. He provided my team with a photo of a device that he thought might work. We took that photo, pulled a team of our engineers and undergraduate students together, and did a ground-up design and build of nearly 100 of these isolation boxes and delivered them to the Med Center. The boxes have been extremely well received by our clinicians, and they've begun spreading the word. In the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we've received inquiries from across the country for the designs for these boxes so that they can be deployed in other hospitals. On top of the two projects that I just mentioned, CDME has been working with our clinicians to develop multiple different ventilator designs, HVAC sterilization techniques, alternatives to manufacturing pathways for sanitizing wipes. These plus about a half a dozen or so smaller but important projects have kept CDME very busy as we fight COVID-19. Our center thrives on being at the front lines, and by involving our undergraduate students in these rapid fire programs, we've been working really hard to give them the necessary skills that they need after graduate. So when you hire them, or when industry hires them, they're ready to fight the fight that your industry or your business has. With that, I'll step back and let Laura take over for the next presenter.
Great. Thanks so much, Nate. I don't know about the audience out there, but I have a personally vested interest in increased production in Clorox wipes. So thank you for all you're doing in that space. So up next, I want to introduce Purina Guma, who is the Edward Orton Jr. Chair in Ceramic Engineering. Purina, let's hear a little bit more about your breathalyzer testing research that you're working on.
Yes, hello. It is a great privilege to be invited by Dean Williams to participate in this year's Dean's Roadshow to talk about my work on the breathalyzer for COVID-19 detection. And I'm just going to share my screen with you as I start my slides. So my work has been focusing on the portable, handheld, selective, breath-based diagnostic that is going to allow early detection plus monitoring of the severity of COVID-19. The technology is based on resistive chemosensing. The breathalyzer, as you see on the slide to the left of your screen, it's a handheld device and it aims to detect infectious diseases in general, but it has become very, very specific for COVID-19, as I will tell you why. The principle is detection of volatile organic compounds that are found in a single exhale in the human breath, and this nitric oxide and other volatile organic compounds like hydrocarbons. It takes 15 seconds to give the reading, and you just take a single exhale that anybody universally can be done by the use of this nano sensor technology. So you see 3 sensors over here, 3 nano sensors. And this technology is, like I said, very inexpensive, and it's fast and allows care on site, bedside test when care is needed, and it relies on a lot of material science to make the sensing elements to be specific to only a particular analyte in a very complex environment that the human breath is. With funding from the National Science Foundation, we have been adapting the breathalyzer to specifically detect COVID-19. And for that, we have identified 3 biomarkers: nitric oxide, which is a marker of oxidative stress; isoprene, which is the most common, the main hydrocarbon in breath, and signals the onset of infection; and ammonia, which really is there to manifest the severity of the disease. So with a simple form factor and a single exhale, we can now use the device that you see on the left. You exhale once, or you can collect the sample in a breath bag, and you know if someone has been infected but asymptomatic, or you know what the progress of the disease severity is going to be. What we are doing now, we have been working with the Wexner Medical Center, and we are in the process of carrying out clinical trials. So we anticipate that this technology is going to allow us to go back to a normal life, whether we are to be tested before flying a plane, or going to have a regular test at the doctor's office, or to do go back to campus. And I'm really grateful for the support of the college for allowing us to do this work, and also enables this interdisciplinary research. And thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Laura.
Thank you, Purina. We're grateful to have you doing this work. So thank you for keeping that going for us.
Thanks indeed.
Okay, up next, I'd like to introduce 2 faculty, Daniel Gallego Perez, who is an assistant professor in the surgery department at the Wexner Medical Center, as well as within our own biomedical engineering department. We're here into PhD, so welcome to another alum tonight, as well as Natalia Higuito Castro, who is also a 2-time graduate of biomedical engineering and works in the biomedical engineering department on the faculty, as well as general surgery. So we've got some very well qualified folks here tonight. Daniel, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your vaccine research and anti-inflammatory therapies?
Yes, give me a second. Let me share my screen, Laura. And okay, hoping you guys can see that. So again, thanks for the invitation. Basically, Natalia and I both run. Am I running presentation mode or not?
Daniel, it's looking great on our end.
Oh, is it? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So Natalia and I both run research programs which are basically rooted at the interface between engineering, medicine, and nanotechnology. We're also married, full disclosure. Our labs typically focus on developing nanomedicine-based strategies to repair damaged organs and tissues or to develop therapies for cancer. However, given the current situation, our programs started to pivot and also look into how we can leverage some of our technologies to help in the fight against COVID-19. So specifically, we've been trying to develop improved vaccination approaches to prevent infection or therapies that can treat inflammation in patients that are already infected. So tissue nano transfection is basically a technology that we develop at OSU, and the goal of this technology is to basically program new functions into the skin. The skin typically has a barrier function, but one of our goals with TNT is to engineer a small patch of the skin to produce vaccine nanoparticles for COVID-19 to prevent the infection. So right now we're basically using TNT to deliver a specific fragment of the COVID-19 genome into the skin. The skin, of course, has immune cells, which can respond to this genetic information the same way they will respond to a conventional vaccine. But at the same time, we are using TNT to force the skin to produce vaccine-loaded nanoparticles that can then disseminate throughout the entire body to engage other key immune cells in the fight against a potential infection with COVID-19. So in a sense, we are turning the skin into a vaccine bioreactor to propagate and amplify anti-COVID-19 immune responses. And then I'm gonna let Natalia talk about the research in her program.
So just like Daniel explained, TNT is a very versatile technology that can be used to program new functions into the skin. As far as treatment strategies go, we're also using TNT to force the skin to produce nanoparticles. But in this case, they will be loaded with anti-inflammatory signals that can be guided to the lungs. But there is a significant amount of inflammation going on due to the COVID infection. And this is important because one of the major challenges with COVID patients is the development of acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS. So these patients have trouble breathing, and as such, they have to be placed under mechanical ventilation. However, although critical for patient survival, the mechanical stress that it's imposed during ventilation exacerbates the initial injury to the lung and increases the inflammation, which could lead to a multi-system organ failure or death. So in this picture to the right, we can see how these anti-inflammatory nanoparticles would preferentially travel to the lung to release their anti-inflammatory cargo. So in general, the vaccine that Daniel described aims to prevent the disease from happening. But if someone acquires an infection, then the anti-inflammatory therapy will aim to reduce the progression of inflammation so that the patients can recover faster from the infection. So with this, we would like to share with you.
It's not allowing me to move.
If we can move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Well, we would like to recognize that our precision nanomedicine labs have been funded through multiple sources that include federal funding through NIH, private funding through the American Heart Association, and of course, seed funding through OSU through the Office of Research. So that's all. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you to you both.
Thanks.
And so our last panelists for the evening are Hesham El-Gamal, who is the chair of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and Ness Shroff, who is an Ohio eminent scholar in computer science and engineering and electrical and computer engineering. And they're here to tell us a little bit about their work on contact tracing. So Ness, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here, and let's see if I can get this started. Okay, can you see my screen now? All right, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about privacy-preserving acoustic contact tracing technology that we are developing at OSU with my collaborators Dong Xuan and Jixian Lin in computer science. And then I'll hand it over to Hesham to talk about how this particular technology will be integrated into OSU's overall effort for contact tracing and to keep the campus safe. So contact tracing is extremely critical to identify individuals who may have been infected because of the fact that this virus is a very stealthy virus. And what it will do is it will end up, infecting people even without them knowing it, because the incubation period is quite large. So you saw Bob went ahead and infected a number of these people. And now, because they don't know how they got it, once they get it, the traditional approach for contact tracing has been, who did you meet? Where did you go? And that typically is quite difficult because it relies on people's memories. And instead, what a lot of us are now thinking about is use the ubiquity of our cell phones in order to automatically determine when people have been close enough. So the bad news is that almost every existing contact tracing solutions that uses the mobile phone uses a technology called Bluetooth, which can go through walls and has reasonably large range, which could lead to a lot of false alarms, which is not something that you want. And so because of that reason, what we've done is we've taken an alternative approach and used inaudible acoustic signals between mobile phones in order to capture contacts more accurately. So if a user tests positive for COVID-19, CDC or ODH, for example, can publish their random ID history, doesn't disclose their information, but those users that were in proximity will now get an alert that they probably need to go and get a COVID-19 test. So this is just a slide that compares this Bluetooth solution where the person on the right receives an alert even though they are nowhere near anyone else because there's a wall separating them. That will not happen in our technology. Final remarks, we've just received word today that this project is going to get funded from the National Science Foundation, which is great news for our efforts. And now I'm going to hand it over to Hesham El Gamal, who will talk about how this work is to be integrated with OSU's overall contact tracing efforts.
Thanks, Nes. So as Dean Williams mentioned in the beginning, Ohio State is building very detailed and sophisticated plans for reopening campus. And the top priority will always be the safety and health of our students, staff, and faculty. So in order to ensure a safe and healthy environment for everybody, we need to have technology in place for detecting any potential spread and isolating it and mitigating the situation. So we have a great asset in Ohio State, which is our app, which has a huge audience among our students, staff, faculty, and alums, actually. So Nes and his colleagues' technology came at exactly the right time, because by integrating that technology with the app, we're going to be able to identify and cases, if there is any unfortunate cases of positive COVID ID on campus, then we can identify that and build the right strategy to respond to it. This will happen in collaboration with other data sources that we have related to the Wi-Fi access or building access. So we want our approach to be data-driven, so it's robust and ensures that that we can continue to do our research and education within a safe and healthy environment. So that's how it should be.
Great. Thank you so much, and congratulations to both of you for the funding. That's very exciting news. Just a great example of how lots of organizations outside the college believe in the work that we're doing. So thank you to all the panelists for sharing your work tonight. Now I want to turn it back over to Dean Williams to have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation about why Ohio State is uniquely situated to do this kind of work. Dave?
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to all the panelists. And I would remind all our group here assembled that this is just a selection of an extraordinary amount of research and creativity that's going on in the college. And as you can see, not just in the college, but reaching out across the university and across multiple other universities to address this, this really serious issue. So I'd like to ask the panelists a few general questions that would allow them to amplify on that particular point. So the first question for the panelists is, how is the college and the university uniquely situated to support your work in this area? And let me start perhaps by asking Nate to address that to start off with. How is the college and the university uniquely situated to support your work?
I think our diversity. So the diversity of degrees, thought, processes. I can't imagine working anywhere else where for one project, pick any one of the ones that I talked about, we involved groups from material science, industrial systems, ECE, electrical and computer engineers, veterinary medicine, dentistry. It honestly makes solving problems like the ones that we talked about almost easy, because we can pull experts out of a pool of 5,000 people, and we can do it almost instantaneously.
Thank you. Purina, perhaps you could add to that from your experience as a relatively new Buckeye. If Purina isn't hearing me, perhaps Daniel,
Can you hear me? I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
I'm sorry, Purina. Yeah, I couldn't hear you.
I didn't realize. So yeah, Ohio State University is an amazing university, and we in the College of Engineering, we really have the incentive, and with your guidance, Williams, we can really reach out to our colleagues in other colleges. So I have been working with the VetMed College, veterinary medicine, because they have expertise in coronaviruses in animals, and then with the Wexner Medical Center when they treat patients with COVID-19. So it has been instrumental in developing this diagnostic technology to build this team, the disciplinary team, across different sciences, and that's where we are. So
Thank you, Purina. Daniel, again, if you could amplify how the college and the university are uniquely positioned to support the work that you're doing.
Thanks again for the invitation. So basically what I think has been an instrumental help for us is the fact that we can, as Nathan and Purina have mentioned, we are positioned in a campus where you have College of Medicine, Engineering, and Veterinary Medicine within walking distance. I'm a faculty from the College of Engineering, but my lab sits within the College of Medicine. I can walk to any of my colleagues' offices to discuss with them these ideas. Beyond just the proximity between disciplines, I think the college, for example, has done a really great job at facilitating us to return to the lab to do COVID research. There's been a ton of efforts trying to keep everyone safe, but the College of Engineering for sure was one of the first ones that facilitated some of their faculty members to come back to the labs to sort of implement some of their knowledge and technologies and ideas to develop new solutions for the disease. So beyond proximity, I think the leadership that we have facilitated also the return to campus for this very important task.
Thank you, Daniel. Natalia, if you'd like to chime in too.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So another point, and that we like to just bring to your attention is that the college has been championing our research, actually, which has enabled us to secure funding, for example, through the Office of Research, to move forward our anti-inflammatory therapy as one example. So we started working in this project early on when everything was closed. And as Daniel just mentioned, the College of Engineering has been instrumental to be able to go back to the lab. So our labs are actually located, my lab is also located in the medical center. We have strong collaborations with the pulmonary division, but it has been instrumental to be able to move or transition all of our research and try to apply what we normally do into this new challenge. It has been challenging, but it has been really rewarding as well. So thank you so much for the support.
Oh, thank you, Natalia, for what you're doing. Hesham, anything more to add?
It's hard to do so, but maybe I could say the collaborative culture. So all my colleagues have commented on the breadth and the depth of expertise that we have at Ohio State, but there's another element, which is the willingness and interest of everybody to work together to solve the problem. So it was amazing to see how teams can come together very quickly, whether in those problems or in delivering our teaching and sharing information. So it's a very strong collaborative culture, and we're all grateful for that.
Thanks, Hesham. Ness?
Yeah, I second what Hesham just said. I think the collaborative culture at Ohio State is outstanding. I did want to mention one additional enormous help that we got from the folks, in OCIO, which helped, me set up a very, very quickly a workshop, a call to arms workshop for NSF, which sort of, sprung a number of very interesting ideas, and that would not have been possible without, help with Zoom, etc. That was really needed to make it happen.
Thank you, Ness. Thank you all for your questions. The next question I'd like to ask the panel, and I'll start this time with Purina, is did the COVID-19 situation provide new opportunities for you to collaborate and work in an interdisciplinary way? Purina, if you could address that. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So yes, definitely. Like I said before, engineer, we are as a material scientist, I'm developing great sensors. But then this with COVID-19, the situation was it's a new disease. Nobody hasn't really affected humans before. So we have to figure out how it is manifested, and then find out are there biomarkers we can make sensors for. So yes, definitely. We started, like I said, with working with Andy Bauman in VetMed, and now with Matthew Exline at Wexner Medical Center, and it has been an amazing journey. And thank you, Dean Williams, for allowing us to use the lab and to make progress in making these devices. So yes.
Thank you, Purina, and I hasten to add it's not me who ultimately approved those decisions, but I'm certainly not in the position to make those decisions. That we have a whole team at the university level and the college that make the decisions on who can be on campus in these difficult times. But yeah, I'll take the thanks on behalf of the team. Daniel, perhaps you could add how this particular situation has opened doors for you that that weren't open before COVID-19.
Yeah, I think clearly this has challenged us a little bit more because, like I mentioned, my lab and Natalia's lab, we typically didn't focus on infectious diseases. We developed technologies for other types of problems, but when this happened, and with us being forced to retrieve back to our homes, and I also have an appointment in the College of Medicine, and my colleagues in the Department of Surgery were just racing back to the hospital trying to do their part. We sort of felt like, what can we do from here? So a ton of the stuff that we did was sort of going back to the drawing boards, trying to see how we can adapt our technologies to sort of find solutions for this disease. That clearly opened up a new avenue of research for us to explore and also funding opportunities. And beyond that, I think we found another niche where we can actually make an impact with our engineering solutions. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you for your 2 cents. And Natalia, do you have a nickel to add?
Me?
Do you have anything to add on how you might provide new opportunities for the because of the COVID-19?
Right. So as Daniel just mentioned, it was brainstorming at the beginning, going back to the drawing board to apply whatever technologies we already have in the lab moving forward to this specific condition. So one of the major opportunities that we have after applying for the seed funding through the Office of Research is the network that they created. So we had an opportunity to get in contact with other PIs that are actually doing COVID research. And one of the new opportunities that we found is that there is another project that's being funded that is developing an animal model of COVID in the College of Medicine. So what we're envisioning as a new opportunity is to finish this first part of optimization of the therapy and then apply it in this model that is actually also funded through the seed funding with the Office of Research. So it's always new collaborations. It's challenging, as I mentioned before, but it's always rewarding to see that we can do a small part trying to develop new therapies like we envision always to do when we started the career in biomedical engineering.
Thanks, Natalia. Move on to Hesham and to Ness. You were working on contact tracing before it became such an extraordinary focus for the safety of the whole of the nation. So please tell us more about how your work here is going to open up new opportunities for your own research.
Yes, so definitely. So that the fact that this technology is going to go live on campus will offer a platform for data that's kind of priceless on how we can actually start thinking about smart communities, about healthy community, about how we can inform designs and develop technologies based on data from actual users. And similar to that project, actually, Ness and I are involved in another project that was funded by the Office of Research on understanding the spread of misinformation related to COVID-19. So I would say, since we are in technology, what happened with this challenge is highlight the need of the society to invest more in technologies that lead to more healthy society. And that can range from connectivity, because now we need stronger Wi-Fi and 5G, to cybersecurity so we can protect our infrastructure and privacy, to making decisions that leads to more healthy and smart communities. So I think our discipline as engineers and electrical and computer engineers will be able to contribute a lot of good things in the years to come from inspired by that challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I would just add that, there have been a number of projects that have opened up as a response to this COVID crisis. So, we have projects that are going on how to do smart testing as well as contact tracing. So contact tracing is just one piece of it. Hesham mentioned, disinformation, how that spreads. That's another issue that we are very, very closely working on. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, there have been lots of opportunities that have, manifested this in themselves because of this crisis.
Thank you, Ness. Nate, what new opportunities have been opened because of what you've been doing with the COVID-19 research?
Aside from the kind of obvious relationships that were built out of necessity, which I don't want to downplay, I think it's opened our eyes in the center to things we hadn't originally thought of. So we, as an example, we have a program with some of Hesham's team to build out a full-scale SCADA system. So the SCADA system was originally envisioned to be able to do research on controls and safety and kind of how plants and facilities operate together. Now with COVID, we could envision how that same system could be used for contact tracing and how contact tracing affects equipment and facilities. So you start to incorporate operations of a manufacturing facility or a production line along with the health of your workforce. It's kind of changed the optics that I'm looking at these projects through.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you all for those answers. So we've seen how we are well positioned in the college to do this kind of research at a moment's notice. We've seen that when we do this, new opportunities open up. The last question I'd like to ask of the panel is, so what's the future of this work? We trust that COVID-19 will pass at some appropriate time, but has the opening of these doors and these new collaborations opened up whole new fields for you to look at? Let me start by asking Daniel if he could address that.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, definitely us venturing into vaccine research, for example, will allow us to develop solutions not only for COVID-19, but for multiple infectious diseases that may come our way. Hopefully not as severe as COVID-19, but the hope is to establish that as one of the tools that we can basically promote in our lab. So once we develop some proof of concept data in small animals, our goal is to sort of continue to work with the experts on infectious diseases to sort of transition this research to the right type of arena so that it moves away from the lab bench and starts to get implementation in the actual bedside.
Thank you, Danielle. Natalia, if you could answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the anti-inflammatory therapies perspective, our goal is to build a stronger network of collaborators in the infectious disease field to be able to have more data to transition these therapies into clinical settings. So the therapy that we're developing applies for ARDS, and ARDS was a condition that's affecting a significant amount of people in the US before COVID. It's just a hallmark of COVID. And one of the major issues with ARDS is that there are no FDA-approved therapies or drugs that can be used to treat these patients. So this therapy, as we progress with the development and try to move it forward, is going to be a significant help for many patients beyond COVID. That's what we're seeing for the future.
Hesham, what's the future for you?
Smart communities and smart cities. So this is a very powerful collaboration that we have right now because it combines top researchers with operations. So this is going to be having the Office of Chief Information Officer with us. So we will end up with a live lab with an amazing amount of data that we can harness to guide decisions. One can think of simple immediate applications like energy consumption on campus. Ohio State is a small city. So by understanding user behavior and then we can do better at how do we generate energy, how we save energy. There is the NG collaboration that can come in place. So, I mean, this is big news for us. I mean, just running research based on real data from a community of 100,000 people is just something that will result in amazing things.
Thank you, Hesham. Ness, you care to amplify that?
I'm muted. So with data comes enormous responsibility, right? So one of the big challenges is how to ensure privacy. So how to make sure that people's data is kept in a way in which it's safeguarded. So that's a very, very big challenge, and that's going to continue well beyond COVID. Some of the contact tracing work that we are doing is again, could be useful in other pandemics coming down. With the advent of machine learning, we are looking into doing very, very smart testing, which could reduce the number of tests that one needs to do in order to contain the virus. And that's something which is, again, not only applicable to COVID, but also for potential future pandemics or hopefully less than pandemics coming down the pike.
Thank you, Ness. Nate?
Yeah, so one thing that I took away from my experience in the oil and gas industry is that everything changes. So the next thing, whatever it is, whether it's a pandemic or an energy crisis or tires falling off cars, who knows what it'll be. The thing that this crisis, this pandemic has reaffirmed within me is that what makes Ohio State special and makes us strong is us, right? It's all of us. And I don't know, to coin or to quote Gordon Gee, I think we are one university. The more we act like one university instead of X departments and colleges, the stronger we're going to be. And I'm going to do everything in my power to drive my team to echo that in everything they do.
Thank you, Nate. Farina,
Yes.
what's the future here for you?
Yeah, with respect to breath analysis, validating the breathalyzer for COVID-19 will open the pathway for personalized medicine and non-intrusive, non-invasive, affordable to everyone, easily deployable. So they will, if there is any other, not pandemic, but even if it's a flu next year, then there will be a way to detect it very fast and get therapeutic treatment very effectively. So that's really what I envision.
Thank you, Farina, and thank you again, all the panel, for these views of the world before, during, and after the COVID-19. And what I'd like to just draw attention to you, and I think it's obvious, is the diversity of the panel that we have presented to you. This is just a small fraction of the extraordinarily diverse faculty that we have in the Ohio State College of Engineering. Nate drew attention to that diversity as a real strength, and I think you have seen that that is indeed the case. So again, thank you to the panelists, and Laura, back to you.
Thanks, everyone. So I want to remind everybody who is listening tonight or watching live that you have the opportunity now to pose your own questions of Dean Williams or any of our panelists. So just a reminder, along the bottom of the screen, you should see a Q&A button. Feel free to use that to chat your questions in, and we're going to do as best we can to get to all of those. And I'm telling you, we've got some really great questions coming in. So let's start with a question for you, Dean Williams, from Luann Kovac in chemical engineering, that she is asking about how can we adapt to the new circumstances with lab classes, because labs are a little bit unique and you can't necessarily do a lab in the same way with a virtual learning experience. So if you could address some of the word you've been hearing at the university level and the college level.
Yeah, certainly labs pose a particular challenge for us with the need for social distancing, personal protective equipment, and so on. The challenge is that every lab is different. Every group project is different. So in the best academic traditions, we leave this up to the faculty to decide how best they can offer the experience of a lab, the experiential hands-on learning that comes with a lab. The particular challenges we face are that depending on how things are in the fall, that we can't necessarily expect that every student will be on campus, or indeed that every professor and every staff member will be on campus. What we did at relatively short notice in the spring was in some cases to simply provide the students with data that had been generated in previous labs, along with a description of how it was generated, and ask the students to interpret the data in light of the lab that they would have done. So there are various intriguing ways to simulate a lab online, even if you can't be in person in the lab. And I have no doubts that our faculty are more than ingenious enough to ensure that the lessons learned from labs under the old way of doing things will be taught in different ways in the new way of doing things.
Thank you, Dean. And so here is a really great question from, I believe it's Tim Angel from Mechanical Engineering, who asked if there's anything that we have learned from our efforts to fight COVID-19 that would change how our engineering researchers work in the future. So Dave, maybe we'll start with you and then any of our panelists if you want to add your thoughts to the answer.
Well, I think that many of the answers from the panel discussion address that question. We've seen that we have faculty and staff who are rightly in the college because of their innovative capabilities to react to changed circumstances, to think of new ways of addressing problems. And I think that that will continue in the post-COVID-19 world. The new partnerships that have been opened, we will continue to build on those. The new ways that we have thought about how we actually interact with our students, how we interact with faculty across the university and at the universities will open doors for us. So I think that it will be a new normal. There will be an opportunity for some people to work from home for significant periods of time, if not all the time. We don't know how that is going to work out. We might envisage that some of our lab experiences might be carried out through virtual reality, that we give the virtual reality headsets to our students and immerse them in the lab through their headsets rather than in 3 dimensions. I think the possibilities are endless for rethinking the whole educational process.
Hey, I'm really excited. We've got a lot of specific questions about what the panelists have talked about today. So let's get into that a bit. The first one is for Nate. It's from Ashley Albertson, who asks, can you share how not only your access to advanced manufacturing equipment, but also your team of experts at CDME played a role in your COVID-19 response?
Yeah, sure. So when I'll talk about specifically the 2 examples that I gave during the talk. So as we mapped out the designs for the 3D printed swabs, one of the opportunities that we had were to rapidly test and print those swabs in-house because we have, I don't know the current number, say 24 3D printers. We have 1 of each modality and multiple manufacturers. So we could test how swabs from different manufacturers and different processes, how they behaved, how easy they were, what their print times were. And we could do that all real time. So as we made design changes, we could almost instantly try things out. On the isolation boxes, one of the benefits that we had there was that we needed very large equipment. So those boxes aren't massive, but they're a good couple feet square. We have full-scale manufacturing equipment, from injection molding to stamping to forming to water jet cutting. We didn't have to go find a resource and determine if they were going to be able to go in the office or go into the shop. We had it all available, and we have the staff that knows how to run it, so we could turn the switch on, go make parts, deliver them to the hospital, and then turn the switch back off again. It made things very easy for us.
Thanks, Nate. This next question I'd like to ask of Daniel, and it has to do with vaccines. It's from, I believe, Kusha Ansari from Mechanical Engineering, who asks, if and when a vaccine is developed, what is the timeline for that vaccine to go through necessary testing and mass production in order to get to the public?
So the timelines are a little bit more challenging to predict because we have to go through a regulatory pathway to be able to implement this in humans. I think when you start from scratch and you're trying to develop a new vaccine, it'll be at least a good half a year to 1 year to develop and test the capabilities in small animals. Once you have all the resources in place, then you can approach the FDA and then start to look into actual clinical trials. those typically can go from 12 months to 18 months. One of the things that we are trying to do, though, is to develop the vaccination approach, not so much the vaccine, but the vaccination approach that can be actually implemented with any vaccine developed in the world. So what our technology does is to potentiate the response of the immune system to any vaccine that's developed. So we can partner up with any other team, not just in the US, but across the world that already might have done a ton of the legwork on vaccine development, and simply marry their vaccine with our delivery approach, our TNT technology, to sort of speed up the translation from lab bench to clinic.
Thank you, Daniel. And now a question for Hesham and for Ness. This is from John Jacob, and he asks, what challenges are you facing with regard to privacy with contact tracing? Do you think there'll be any stigma from people who don't want to be traced?
Right. So, I mean, one of the big issues that will happen is that we will have to, make sure that the public is educated with the right information. That this is a technology that can be as private as they would like it to be. That, for example, if you look at the way in which the back end can be designed, it can be designed in a way in which you don't have any information that is stored in a central server. The only information that you have is whether or not you've been in contact with someone. So there are ways in which one can do that. Of course, as you have more information that you are willing to provide a central server, you can do much better things with that contact tracing. You can do better contact tracing, you can do better testing, etc. So it just depends on the comfort level of the individuals as to what level of data they would like us to store.
And we have a follow-up question about contact tracing from Daniel Coombs, who is asking whether it can evaluate time and distance to the contact, because it seems it makes a big difference if the exposure is short and a closer distance versus over a longer period of time.
Yes to both. So right now we can do, we can definitely do within 6 feet, and we can definitely assess the amount of time that the contact has spent with each other. We are even right now, trying to figure out whether we can identify, gestures, your facial direction, whether you're actually face to face or not, depending on movement patterns.
Thank you. And we have 2 questions for Purina about the breathalyzer testing. The first is from Ron Boucher, who asks, what is the specificity and sensitivity of the breathalyzer test?
Yes. So the specificity is pretty high. We have specific biomarkers for COVID-19. So we think 90% specificity, and the sensitivity is the low part per billion. So for each of these biomarkers, so we have very high sensitivity as well.
And then the second question from Daniel Coombs is, would you need to follow up the breathalyzer test with any sort of a swab test, or is the breath test sufficient?
It should be sufficient. That's what it determines. It determines the infection, so it shouldn't need anything else, no? The only thing is if you find out that your condition deteriorates, then you have to just consult with your physician. So you go into therapeutic treatment early on before you have any organ failure, for example. That is what has led to fatalities in this disease, and ammonia levels is going to tell you that.
Thank you. And so let's take a shift for just a moment. We're getting a few more questions about student needs at this point. So from Michael Mead, he's wondering, what is your sense of what our students need the most from the university, their professors and administrators right now, so that they can continue to succeed and graduate? And how do you see corporate partners helping? So Dave, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you, Laura. I think what our students need to know, and indeed have been provided with, is first of all access to the technology to ensure that any online content, any online teaching is available to them. And we work very hard to ensure that online access is available to all of the thousands of students in the College of Engineering. We need to ensure that those students, and we have found far too many who have food insecurity problems, and in some cases have not had the ability to have a roof over their heads, even that is, some of our students are homeless, and that we provide them with the resources necessary in these times when access to campus is highly limited, that they are able to have a roof over their heads and food on the table, this most elemental of human needs. Beyond that, of course, we want to ensure that they have access to all the advice they need, and our advising staff have been working around the clock to ensure that all the questions the students have been answered. And of course, our faculty and staff on the teaching side of the college have done extraordinary things to ensure that the content that we need to make accessible to our students so they get the knowledge to become the engineers who are useful, employable, and able to graduate is provided to them. So there are several needs, and some of them are real engineering needs and some of them are basic human needs, which is why we highlighted the two funds that have been used significantly to help our students, particularly with those basic human needs.
Dave. And one final question from the audience Q&A, actually I see one more coming in, is for the students, is there a standardized remote learning system or technology, or are different colleges and departments using the tools that they want? So if you'd like to start, and then maybe Hesham, as the chair of a department, you could speak a little bit to that.
Again, the way that individual faculty members choose to put their content online is up to the individual faculty member, but it has to be accessible to the students through any platform that they may have, be it a Mac, PC, Android, or whatever. So we have an extraordinary IT department led by Ginger Brion that has mobilized its forces to ensure that whatever platform individual students have, they will have access to whatever platform the faculty choose to use for their online teaching. I'm sure Hesham knows a lot more about that than I do, so I'll defer to him for more depth on that answer.
Thanks, Dave. So I definitely agree with you. I would add that it's not just the technology, it's the experience, it's the engagement. So we want to make sure that virtual technology is just a tool used within our education strategy, and we continue to insist on giving our students the best education experience. So in electrical and computer engineering, and I know other departments are doing, we have now task force that are developing best practices and guidelines, and in engaging and informing our faculty of the best ways to make sure that we deliver the same, if not better, education experience with virtual. So I see this as an opportunity. So one thing that came from the feedback of the students last semester was the availability of content all the time helped them with some learning. So even with that, when we go back fully to in-person, we're not going to abandon this. We're going to continue to use that to offer a better education experience for the students. And I would just add one thing about what can the university, what do we need to offer to our students? So I would say a sense of community, a supportive community. So we are all here for our students, and what the spring semester showed us is that the commitment that our faculty and staff have for our students is just remarkable. So we want them to know that we are, whatever decisions we make is just to help them go through the process. And we're definitely engaging our industrial partners in seeing different ways of skilling the students, making sure that they are ready for the workforce. So we're taking a different approach to designing our curriculum, which is inspired by what the industry need to make sure that they have all the skills they need to find the job. So it's the community. That's one of my favorite words, is the fact that we're a close community, completely focused on our students.
Thank you. And so the final question we've got is from Julie Clark, who is very interested in the collaborative work that you've talked about tonight, all the panelists. She specifically asks, what opportunities are there for philanthropy to continue to support this work or any other collaborative efforts in the space? So maybe Nate, if you want to start, and if others would like to add, please do.
Oh, goodness. Philanthropy is, so what I'm learning, I've only been at the university 5 years. What I'm learning is philanthropy is part of the lifeblood of the university. Some of the programs that we're trying to do, including all the support of COVID-19, it originates with altruism and doing the right thing for the community, not making money. And to survive in a place where supporting the community and doing the right thing all the time, to work in that community, we have to have philanthropic donations. I didn't necessarily think about what philanthropy would look like when we started this dialogue. So I don't know if that's the right answer or not.
I think it's a great answer. Is there any other specifics anybody would like to add? Any specific elements of the programs that you're working on that need support? Any evidence of philanthropy that you've had in your work to date?
Just to mention, we are in the midst of a pandemic, and that's a humanitarian issue, and that's where we need philanthropy in many different forms. So whether it is to support students, whether it is to support the cross-disciplinary activities, whether it is to take technologies and move them to the marketplace faster, I think there are many ways we can enable that. So that's some of the ideas.
Very well said. Thank you, Farina. And I just want to say thank you to each of our panelists and to Dean Williams for the conversation tonight. I think you have moved this forward in front of our alumni in a way that maybe we had no idea the work that was going on at the university. So thank you for spending your time with us tonight. And I just want to close by letting everyone know, again, you'll see my contact information on the screen now. If there's anything that you heard about tonight that you want to learn more about, please reach out. My email is here, my phone number is here. I would also encourage you, we have another one of these roadshows coming up. The website there at the bottom of this slide is the link to where you can register, but that is a specific town hall with Dean Williams, which will be Tuesday, June 9th, also at 7 p.m. Eastern. The dean will give a more expanded state of the college, and we'll have more opportunity for discussion just like this, where you can ask the dean exactly what's on your mind. I know he's excited to be able to answer those questions. I want to remind everybody that our presentation from tonight will be posted online in the coming days. So if you want to watch it again, if you want to share it with anybody who couldn't join us tonight, we definitely would encourage you to do that. We also, to try to encourage some of the networking that we would normally have at our roadshows, we are going to share a roster of attendees who have opted in to share their information with you. So look for that in an email. And my hope is that you would actively reach out to a fellow alum or a fellow community member who is here tonight to keep that conversation going. I know that networking is becoming a little bit more challenging in the current situation in these virtual spaces, but keeping connected is the main reason we do what we do with these programs. So I would invite you to do that. And there are a handful of other ways that you can stay connected with the college. As you can see on your screen, our college website, you can go there, look at the calendar of events and see any upcoming virtual programs we have. We have lots of fantastic social media channels, and I will give a shout out to our communications team. They are posting stories about COVID-19 and many other activities of the college on an ongoing basis. So I would encourage you to get signed up with those and have a real-time feed of what's going on. Right after this event, you should be getting a survey from us that will give your opinion on what you thought about tonight, but more importantly, as we're planning for the future of virtual engagement, we want to know what programs you're interested in. So please do fill that survey out. And as an added incentive to that, let's see if I can share this with you. We are creating some very custom virtual backgrounds that we will share with those of you who complete the survey. So this brand new, trust me, I'm an engineer. And then for our architecture friends, we have, trust me, I'm an architect. So these are exclusively available right now just to college faculty and staff. But if you complete a survey, we're going to send you the links to download this. You'll be the talk of the town. So I would encourage you to do that. And again, just thank you. Thank you to the community. Thank you for sticking with us in this time. We really appreciate you spending a part of your evening and learning more about the work that we're doing. So have a great night, everyone. Goodbye.